Are you, Joan?
Well, no.
Their paperwork, there's a seat on the side. Oh, okay, I can sit in the. Those are smaller. I'll sit over here. Oh, the end, one on the end. Okay. So I said, good morning, everyone. We're just waiting on Senator Duplessis, who said he'll be here in a minute and we can get started.
That's weird.
I know, right? What's going on?
I'm good. I'm gonna turn that speaker down. I think.
Okay, sorry, y'all. I don't even know what that is. Sorry about that. That gets you going there. It does, right? That's exactly what we needed.
Very. That is going. Very.
Okay, he's right behind. He's right behind you. Okay. Yes. Okay. And
That would be there.
it's his minutes. Yeah. All right. What you need now?
Everybody who's in this case. Is it the for years? Oh, all right. Yes.
No, that's.
It was approval of the previous meeting. Okay. Okay, good morning, everyone. We're gonna go ahead and get started. My clock says 10:04, so guess we're a few minutes behind, but we're gonna go ahead and get started with today's Juvenile Justice Reform Act Implementation Commission meeting. And all right, we're gonna have that going on. All right. Thank you so much for the audio support and for all the staff who has helped in putting this very important meeting together. My name is Royce Duplessis, and I currently serve in the state Senate, representing Senate District 5 in New Orleans, and I have been a member of this commission, and I'm grateful to have just been reappointed to the commission since my move to the other chamber. But we're gonna just begin this meeting with a roll call. So Amaya, can you get us started?
Representative Marcus Bryant. Bridget Denicola. Present. Senator Duplessis.
Present.
Piper Griffin. Terry Lambright.
Present.
Richard Pittman.
Present.
Gina Womack.
Present.
And Tracy Woods.
Present.
We do constitute as a quorum today.
All right, we have a quorum. Again, I want to thank everybody for being here today. We're going to move forward with approval of minutes from the November 16th meeting. Everyone should have a copy of the minutes from last meeting.
I will note there is a typo in the middle paragraph of the second page where it says LCL Lee. Correct that typo, and otherwise I will move to approve the minutes.
All right, thanks for pointing that out, sir. So we have a motion from Mr. Pittman. There's a
Second.
typo to be corrected. We have a second from Professor Woods. Any objection? The minutes are adopted. We were going to begin today's meeting with a report from Mr. Curtis Nelson, Deputy Secretary of the Louisiana Office of Juvenile Justice. Mr. Nelson, who's with us. Thank you for joining us, sir.
And is it okay if I remain seated?
Absolutely.
Kind of like this casual.
Yes.
So I'm happy to be here to give you updates on the state of affairs with the Office of Juvenile Justice. And as we all know, this is the 20-year anniversary of Act 1225, transforming our Louisiana juvenile justice system. And many of the agencies, institutions that were involved in that reform work are still present and actively working to make sure we have a quality juvenile justice system in our state. In my review of Act 1225, and I consider myself someone that once I gained an understanding about Act 1225, really making sure I incorporated that in my daily work in the juvenile justice system. And I want to highlight that the focus should be personal involvement in the lives of our children, first in the family, and then in the communities and schools. Continue collaboration and cooperation by the legislative, executive, and judicial branches of the government. And I'm going to come back to that aspect that in order to have a quality juvenile justice system, it goes beyond the executive. We need other aspects of our government to make sure the children are receiving the very best quality services that they can. Another aspect from Act 1225 that I want to just remind everyone today, our juvenile justice system should be a system that's focused on rehabilitation, not punishment. It should be individualized and developmentally appropriate for each youth that we serve. And I will share with you my experience within OJJ over the year when we talk about having a true rehabilitative juvenile justice system. So where is OJJ at today? Of course, our mission is that we are to provide public safety by effectively providing individualized services to the young people who are placed under our supervision so that they can become law-abiding citizens. Our vision is that OJJ is a quality system of care which embraces partnerships with families, communities, and stakeholders to assist with the youth in redirecting their lives so that once again, they can be a responsible citizen. So today, our state looks a lot different before the reform work. There was a time where at any secure facility, you could have over 600 youth in secure care. I think because of a lot of the reform efforts that Louisiana has undertaken, today we have 364 males in secure care. We have another 368 in non-secure care. Our secure care girls population is only 16, and I really want to have some conversation about that because when we look at girls in Louisiana, we have not reached a level where we have to remove a lot of the girls who are having contact with the juvenile court system. The majority of those girls we're able to provide services to in the community. With our community-based supervision, we have right at 2,386 youth that we are supervising. So in total, Louisiana, OJJ, we're working with approximately 3,500 kids annually who require some type of rehabilitative services. The trend that I don't like is that right now, I have sitting in some state detention center waiting for placement, 35 youth with a recommendation of secure care placement. For non-secure placement, I have another 32 youth who are waiting placement in state's custody. And the reason why these young people are waiting placement is because Louisiana, we're still trying to build our capacity so that when the decision is made that a young person should go into state's custody, that we can immediately remove them from the detention center and have them placed somewhere. So on a daily basis in our state, we have about 60 youth who require placement. And as we try to step down children or have children return back to their home, that's what keeps that number around 60. Because I gotta have the space to be able to accept the new entry so that we can safely provide for their needs. So let's take a closer look at the current secure care facilities in our state. And I went ahead and put the demographics so you can have an understanding of the population of children who are being served by OJJ. So Acadiana Center for Youth, that is a 72-bed facility, and we are at capacity at that facility. You see that my population is 66 Black male youth, 4 white male youth, and 2 others who identify as neither Black or white. Acadiana Center for Youth at St. Martinville, which is currently being used as an intake processing facility. We have 24 Black male youth and 1 white youth waiting to be placed at one of the other facilities. Bridge City Center for Youth, although that is a bigger campus, because that is the JUMP program for those youth who have been adjudicated for a sex-related offense, we want to keep Bridge City as that type of program. And so right now, we have 36 youth, and if we need to go beyond 36, we could, but that 36, we're able to use the 3 cottages on the grounds of Bridge City to service those children. Now, interesting enough, when it comes to demographics, I have, it kind of changes. So the majority of the children are white males. I have 11 Black males and 3 who identify as other. Bridge City Center for Youth at West Feliciana. That is the transitional treatment unit. And I'm happy to report to you that the governor has given me the go-ahead to begin to transition children out of that facility. That is a temporary treatment unit. The youth who are placed there, they do not stay there. It's a 4 to 8 week program. And so as the youth is able to de-escalate and safely return back to a general population campus, they are able to move away from West Feliciana. To date, we have probably serviced, I would say, somewhere in the area of 70 to 80 youth who have been placed at West Feliciana so that we could de-escalate them and then return them back to their campus. This number has been pretty consistent. The majority of the population are going to be African-American males. So currently I have 14 Black males and 1 white male at West Feliciana. And that is Angola, but we chose to not call it Angola for our youth because we went into that facility and we modified it so that it could reflect juvenile justice. But again, I'm happy to report to you that we will be transitioning out of that facility as we bring online the new facility in Swanson Monroe. We have an anticipated date of late October, maybe mid-November. As long as the weather continues to hold out, the construction of our new facility is happening, and we believe that we will be able to have that facility open so that we can close down the West Feliciana location. So currently at Swanson Monroe, the existing facility, we could hold up to 80 youth, but we are trying to keep that number around 72 because that's, of course, an open dorm setting. And currently I have 58 Black males, 10 white males, and 4 who neither identify as Black or white. At Swanson Center for Columbia, that is the facility that has traditionally been our fast track program. During the last 2 years, because of spacing issues, we do have some youth there who are not what you would call traditionally fast track youth. And when I say fast track youth, these are the young people that we know, although they were ordered in state's custody, if we can provide them with rehabilitation within 6 to 9 months, they definitely should be transitioned back into the community. And so we want to keep Columbia as that setting. The children there are generally your low risk youth who, like I said, a decision was made for them to go in state's custody, but because of their assessment, we know they're going to respond very quickly to rehabilitation. So currently I have 47 youth there. I could go up to 49, but we're trying to keep that facility operating as it should, as a fast track. And lastly, the Ware Youth Center. Now that is not a state facility. We contract with Ware to house our girls who are ordered to go into secure care. And of the 16 girls who are currently housed at the Ware facility, I have 12 Black females and 4 white females. So the future for OJJ is that we are in the final phases of bringing online the new Swanson Monroe facility. We're going to keep the name Swanson, but this will be the Tier 1 security facility for our state. And when I say Tier 1, the youth who will be housed here will be the youth who have a very high savory, and their assessment indicates that before they can be transitioned to a moderate or low setting, we need to do some intensive rehabilitative work with them. So this will be a 72-bed facility. If you notice, each youth will have their own individualized rooms. One thing that my predecessor, Bill Summers, recognized under his leadership is that the days of having open dorm facilities, we probably should go away from that because we are truly dealing with the youth who the decision has been made that removal from the community is necessary to help get you in a contained setting where we can begin to give you the treatment for your rehabilitation. So the 365 youth that I described that are currently in secure care custody, When they don't respond favorably to the rehabilitation and they engage in aggressive behavior, if they're in an open dormitory, it just makes it more difficult to manage and make sure that the young people and the staff are safe. So the new Swanson facility, every young person will have their own individualized rooms. And so we're looking forward to bringing online that facility. We do plan to keep the rest of the dorms open, and we're looking at how we can repurpose those dorms. It definitely will help with our capacity needs. One thought that we had was that we may want to start a youth challenge-like program that OJJ will oversee. We've talked to the Youth Challenge, the Louisiana National Guard. They are willing to come in and train OJJ staff on how to do a youth challenge program. And so we believe with the space that we will have on the old campus, we will have plenty of room to do some type of youth challenge program. A lot of our judges, they seem to respond favorably to youth challenge, and we want to be able to offer our young people and our judiciary partners something that they have confidence in when we talk about rehabilitating our young people. We will continue to keep the MHT unit. So I don't know if you know this, but there are some young people who, when they're ordered in our custody, they have severe mental health needs. And so we have a mental health facility at Swanson, MHTU, that we will continue to operate. We will continue to operate the transitional mental health unit as well. And we will also bring back online the Cypress dorm, which is, again, a single room dormitory at Swanson. And we believe that the utilization of these three buildings is necessary for where we are at this time in our state. As you know, we do have youth who are placed in group homes. And so this is a list of all of the non-secure facilities that OJJ currently has contracts with. Pretty much we have group homes throughout the state, but what I will tell you, and if there's anything that this commission can do, our group home facilities, like all employers, after the pandemic, it's become a challenge to operate those group homes because of staffing. The wage increase that everyone has experienced, well, our group homes, likewise, they are now competing against organizations and companies that can pay $15, $17, $20 an hour. So as we go into our new fiscal year, I will be developing a budget to recognize the need to increase the contracts for our group homes, because some of our bed shortages is a result of the fact that the group homes may not have sufficient staffing levels to operate at full capacity. And again, we want everyone to operate safely. And so that is something that in the 2024-25 budget, I will be seeking on behalf of the agency an increase in appropriation so that we can pay more to our group home providers in the state. So let's look at who are we serving in our custody. And we went back to 2019 to kind of give you some perspective. So of course, you know, in our state, the age of culpability is 10. So you have to be at least 10 years of age to be arrested in the state of Louisiana. But we also have status offenders, and some of the kids that are represented on here are both delinquent and status offenders. In our state, when we talk about a status offender, that is, if a youth engages in a behavior that if an adult did, it would not be criminal. So for example, if an adult leaves home without permission, that's not a crime. But if a child leaves home without permission, under our state laws, that is considered a status offense. So 0 to 9, you could conceivably have a child who is 8 or 9, who has been adjudicated a child of a family in need of services, who would need services that OJJ possibly could provide. In many areas, they have their own FENS officers. So that's why that number is so low. But 10 to 12, you can see the numbers. You see a dramatic jump when we go from 13 to 14. You see another jump when we go to 15 to 16. And definitely we see a jump when we talk about our 17-year-olds. And this is just the female population. And remember, as I shared with you earlier, the good news for our state is most of the females, we are able to provide rehabilitative services in the community. Now let's look at our male population, and I'll go back. So this is the females. This is what our numbers look like. And now let's look at the males. So when we look at our males population, you do see an increase. And again, 0 to 9. But 10 to 12, you definitely see an increase. 13 to 14, you see that increase, significant increase. 15 to 16, again, we have an increase. And 17-year-olds, we know that raise the age was passed, and so this is a reflection of the 17-year-olds that are being serviced by OJJ. The good news is that the majority of the 17-year-olds who we service are youth that we can serve within the community. But I think there are opportunities for our state. Even when we go back and look at the girls, we know something is happening between this age period of 12 to 13, puberty, adolescence, what's happening in the school setting. How many of these kids are having incidents at the school? One of the things OJJ would like to work on, and we are actively working on, is getting to this population. Because if I can get this 13 to 14 age group, those numbers down, then it's gonna reduce my 15, 16, and 17-year-olds. So statewide, altogether, OJJ, in 2022, we serviced right at 4,881 youth. And that's a reflection of both youth in secure, non-secure, and in the community being supervised. You will see that the number has kind of stayed the same between 2020, 2021, 2022. But more disturbingly is the fact that the majority of the youth being serviced by OJJ are adolescent males. This is another number that I would like to kind of take some time and discuss with you. So the first bracket, it just basically shows any child that has been ordered to receive services from OJJ, the average length that OJJ is working with them. And so you will see that 2019, 382, 2020, 400, 2021, 432, 2022, 444. However, when we look at those youth who are, and again, this number can reflect in the community, group home, secure care setting, that's the average. But when we look at the average for the youth who are placed in secure care, whether they're moved from one facility to the next, this is the average length of stay that for those young people who are ordered in our care. And so the number has not really changed that much since 2019. And what I can report to you in the year that I've been with OJJ and had a chance to travel across the state and sit in many courtrooms, talk to many prosecutors. Sometimes I'll just go to a courtroom and just sit and watch. What I can tell you is that the comprehension of juvenile justice in our state is not consistent. Depending upon where I am in the state, juvenile justice can look a lot different. There are some areas in our state where the focus is more punitive. There are areas in our state where there's a true understanding of juvenile justice. And when I talk about a true understanding of juvenile justice, you can still have a high crime level in your communities or in your cities, but the people sitting at the table every day focusing on rehabilitating young people, they understand that it is a rehabilitative process. It's not punitive. So let me share with you some of the things I've seen in the last year. At a recent modification hearing where OJJ filed a motion to modify, a ADA said to me before the hearing, I don't think this young person has been punished enough. And I told the ADA, what do you mean punish? And he said, you know, punishment is a part of rehabilitation. And I said, I've never heard that before. And so the ADA said, well, I'm going to object to your motion, to your agency's motion, because I feel this youth needs more punishment. And I told the ADA, well, I would really like for you to say that on the record, because when we take you up on appeal, that's going to be the first thing we will put in a brief, that you believe the juvenile justice system is a system based upon punishment. I had another experience in a courtroom where at a motion to modify hearing, the attorney for the child said, oh, I didn't know I had anything to do with this hearing. In fact, I thought that once the child was placed in state's custody, I was relieved of my legal obligation to represent this child. And I told the attorney, I don't know what law school you went to, but how on earth could you think your responsibility to represent the child has ended? You represent the child from the beginning to the end.
We'll talk about that case privately.
We did. So what I will tell you is that due process does not look the same in our state, depending upon where the child is. There are many courts where when the child goes in the courtroom, I have personally watched a defense attorney never open their mouth, never say anything, and the case and the proceeding happens. There are many areas of the state, or some areas of the state, where the concern from the bench is, how can I safely return this child back to their home? And the question that I've posed to some of those judges is, well, where in the children's code does it say anything about safety? I mean, yes, we want the community to be safe, but if the young person has worked the program and they are now eligible to step down, the only criteria in the children's code is, can they continue their rehabilitation in their home, in the community? And sometimes there's pushback because the concern could be, but I have concern that this child could reoffend. I can't guarantee you that a child will reoffend or not. There is some probability that if the treatment has been effective, the odds of that child reoffending will be decreased, but there is no remedy to ever say that a young person will not reoffend. But that should not be the standard that we apply in our state. So when we talk about these average length of stays, that is important for all of us to have an understanding, because we passed a law a few years ago, Children's Code Article 898. And for a child who has been adjudicated for a nonviolent offense, our law says that the maximum amount of time that child should remain in custody is 9 months. And the only reason to keep that child in custody beyond 9 months is if there is a finding by clear and convincing evidence that the child's treatment cannot be continued in the community. The law actually says a less restrictive environment. So therefore, if OJJ is making a recommendation for a child to be placed on parole, the objection should not be, well, I want the child to get their high school diploma. We have schools in the community. The child can continue their education in the community. The objection should not be, well, I want this child to continue to receive substance abuse treatment. We have substance abuse treatment providers in our communities. What I'm telling you today is that, unfortunately, there are children languishing in state custody because we're not consistently following Article 898 of the Children's Code.
Secretary Nelson,
Yes, sir.
how many more slides do you have?
I can wrap it up.
Well, I'm only asking because we're slated to go until 12, and
Yes, sir.
I just want to leave enough time for there to be enough discussion on your presentation and other presentations, public comment, et cetera. So
Yes, sir.
if you could, yeah.
I will get to it. Yes, sir.
All right. Yeah, we have to be out of here at 12.
So what I would like to kind of then wrap up is let you know, we have many successes in our facilities. This is just to let you know that for 2023, we have 30 students who were able to graduate while in OJJ's custody. And I'm really happy to announce that at our Swanson Monroe facility, we had several students take the ACT. One of our students scored a 33 on the ACT. We had another student score 27 on the ACT, another student that scored 25, and we had 3 students, one scored a 19, an 18, and a 17. So believe me, we have young people with so much talent, and that's demonstrated in what they're able to accomplish through our school system. What I will just say as I kind of wrap this up, we do have a collaboration with Fletcher Community College. So at this time, for those students who want to start earning some community college credits, we have the opportunity to do that, a dual enrollment and participation in a 2-year degree program. And what we're working on is furthering that with partnering with Bossier Community College, Southern University, and Ashland University. We want to make sure we're doing our part as far as doing intervention and early intervention work. So we're able to do that with the Justice Reinvestment dollars, and we ask that OJJ be allowed to continue to receive those dollars. For this current budget year, we're looking at receiving right at 5.1 million. Of that money, 2 million will be able to support 17 diversion programs throughout the state. Another 2.5 million will allow OJJ to provide funding to alternatives to juvenile detention centers. And we do use some of that funding to help with the administrative overhead with these programs. So as I kind of conclude, we try to do things with our young people. And the one thing I would ask, we're always looking for organizations who are willing to come on our campuses and work with our young people, celebrate with our young people, share things with our young people. The crew of Athenas, they recently came down to our Bridge City campus, and they came in their Mardi Gras attire, and the young people really enjoyed that day. But we had a motivational speaker, Derek Scott, who was able to really talk to our young people at the Bridge City campus. Likewise, we had a wonderful event with recording artist Rare Breed at Swanson Columbia. And the children's heads are down because at this moment, he's actually doing a prayer. But this is a gospel hip hop artist who wanted to come and spend time with our young people. So we welcome anybody who wants to take time and come on our campuses and interact with our young people. There was some legislation that was passed, and I'll just quickly get through this. So House Bill 523, it will now transfer the licensing oversight from the Department of Children and Family Services to the Office of Juvenile Justice. And that will actually go into full effect July 1 of 2024. But this will be a handoff where OJJ will now have oversight of the licensing of all the detention centers in the state. There was a law that passed that basically now says if a youth is adjudicated for a carjacking, that is a mandatory sentence. So that now means if you're 14 years or older and you're adjudicated delinquent for carjacking, you will have to serve a mandatory period of time before you're able to be eligible for parole. Senate Resolution 166, this requires OJJ to submit quarterly reports on the new tier structure in Louisiana. Senate Resolution 168 creates a task force to study standards within the secure care facilities. So that was another law that was passed. And the last law that was passed, House Resolution 270, creates a task force on juvenile offender policies to develop recommendations for appropriate rehabilitation and parole of juvenile offenders. So that was another matter that came out of the session. So with that, that is our presentation. We're happy to answer any questions if you have any.
Thank you, Secretary Nelson. Just a quick point or two that I want to make, given your presentation, and it was very thorough and comprehensive, and I appreciate you taking the time. And I just want to state so that everybody in the meeting is clear on how this is going to go. There will be an opportunity for public comment. It's my guess that everybody who was here watching the presentation probably has questions or something that they would like to raise to a commission member. Mr. Nelson is not Secretary Nelson is not a commission member, but he did make a presentation. So I would just ask that if you have a question, if you're a member of the public, if you have a comment, just save that until the public comment portion. We'll address it as best we can, but members of the commission will have an opportunity to ask any questions during this time. And I just want to just make a quick point with the labeling of West Feliciana as West Feliciana. I just want to say personally, I don't agree with that. I think you all should call it what it is. And as I've said before, I've told this to the administration, and I'd say this to anybody. I recognize the difficulty in where we are as a state. I recognize that. But I think by calling it something other than what it is, it's sidestepping the reality of the failure that we have, the fact that we failed in this state. We need to call it Angola because that's what it is. So calling it West Feliciana to me doesn't cure anything, despite the retrofits that might have been made at that institution. And I realize it's quote unquote temporary, although I don't think I heard a deadline in terms of when we plan to transition those kids out of there.
We're hoping by at least no later than November, but our target goal is October.
Okay, well, we'll stay on top of that. I noticed a distinct difference in demographics on Bridge City that you pointed out. That one certainly stood out to me. It probably stood out to everybody in the room. Is everybody at Bridge City there in the JUMP program?
Yes, sir. That's the only children at Bridge City are children who have been adjudicated for a sex-related offense, and they participate in our JUMP program. So those are the only children at Bridge City.
Okay. Can you expound a little bit more on that disparity?
So what I will tell you, in my experience as a juvenile prosecutor, and there are some cultural realities that come into play when you have sex offenses with adolescents. Culturally, what I found in my experience in the Black community is something happens in a household that may not get reported. It may be handled different versus, I think those numbers don't reflect that you have more white children engaging in sexual offenses. And a lot of these offenses, let me say this so people understand. When you have a adolescent who's going through their hormonal period, if they choose to act out on a younger child in our state, that is a crime. And many of these offenses, the victim is someone in the same household or someone within the same family. Rarely do you see an adolescent who goes out, stalks a stranger, and engages in a sexual crime. As I have learned over years, a lot of this is just inappropriate behavior, but it is criminal. And so I think what you see in those difference in numbers is, again, there may be some cultural aspects as to why you see more white children versus more Black children.
Okay. All right, thank you. I appreciate it. Mr. Pittman, did you have a question?
Secretary Nelson, can you pull up, you had a couple slides with data on them. Can you pull those back up, please? I think it was the first of the two that had a lot of data.
I don't know if it's gonna let me go back.
Okay.
Okay, now I can.
All right.
Thank you.
And you're getting to it. You referred to the numbers being, it was further back. It's okay, you're going backwards. I see. Yeah, this one. No, not this one, the next one. No, the other direction. Okay. You described this chart here and said that the numbers are up. And I would agree with you that the numbers are up if you look at 2022 versus 2021. I assume this is FY, is the year that just ended.
Yes, sir.
At the beginning of July. But if you look back to 2019, all the numbers are down except for 17-year-olds when we did not have 17-year-olds accused of a violent offense in the juvenile justice system. It looks like what we had was a sharp decline in 2020, probably COVID related. And then it has been creeping back up ever since, but it is still a lot below 2019 levels. And then if you go to the next couple slides, 2 slides over,
Back or forward?
forward.
Let's see.
Yeah, the length of stay.
Let's see.
Okay. I'll say first, I'm confused about how these work, because it seems to me like the numbers at the top should necessarily be higher than the numbers at the bottom. So I don't know how they're being calculated. But more to the point, it looks like in the top chart, what we're seeing is about a 15% increase in length of stay, which is probably where the problem here is. It's not that you're dealing with more youth, it's that they're staying a lot longer. I was just going to wonder if you had comments on
I don't disagree, and that is a great observation. And again, the top graph, what it shows is all children, regardless of whether they're in secure care, non-secure care, or in the community. The average length of time OJJ is spending providing services. But I don't disagree with your point, because if children are not able to go through the process in a reasonable period of time, they stay in, but we're constantly feeding children into the system, that you are absolutely correct, that it will increase our overall number. So I don't disagree with you there. And that is the point, especially when you get into removing a child from their home and bringing them into care. If you bring that child, if you keep that child in whether it's non-secure or secure settings, if you keep them there too long, then their positive behavior will begin to regress and they will begin to act out. And you got to keep in mind, you're bringing new kids into the system who still have not really grasped the rehabilitative process. And when you mix that population together, that's how you have incidents that you saw last summer at Bridge City. What I can tell you is every child that engaged in one of those acts last summer, I have sat down and spoken to them and asked them, tell me what's the process. And every last one of those kids have told me, at a certain point, I lost hope. I gave up. I worked your program. Lamad is a 4-step program. I worked your program. I was compliant. But when I went to court, I was told, go back and do another 4 months and we'll revisit. I went to court the second time and they told me the same thing, go back and keep doing good things. And so many of these children, when it's time for them to go, if we don't step them down, what they're telling me is that they lose hope. And that's why they begin to act out. But I don't disagree with your position. I do think you're correct. This number probably is more showing that you have children that haven't exited the system in a timely fashion. So that just adds, because again, I could have a child that comes to me at age 13 who stays with me through this same period of time. Yes.
And I will state explicitly, I think what you have implied, which is that we need to be more willing to order these children to be released, which is a problem that is ultimately up to the judges. Is that right?
So one thing I will say, because I don't want to create any enemies today,
I don't mind.
we all have to work together. And when you consider the Act 1225, there was a lot of discussion about constantly training judges, prosecutors, public defenders, having certain requirements that yearly, everybody that's of a legal status, you have to go through annual training. You know, we are fortunate in our state that LSU has a juvenile law clinic, Southern has a juvenile law clinic. I think Loyola and Tulane, they may have juvenile programs, but not really clinics. But for most lawyers, they don't learn they don't learn the children's code in our state. Professor Harris, I don't know, as I recall, juvenile, they don't have that on the bar exam. So you conceivably could have a lawyer assigned to handle a juvenile case that does not have a good understanding of the children's code. And that's how you get prosecutors who will make comments that the purpose is to punish. That's how you will get judges who will say, well, I think before I let this child go home, they need to get their high school diploma. That's how that happens, because there's not a real understanding of rehabilitative treatment.
Thank you. So I have one quick question because I know we have to move on, but I just wanted to know if you could give us a quick update on where we are with the governor's announcement for an investigation at the Ware facility regarding the many abuses and suicides that happened there.
So what I can report to the commission is that the governor did make a referral to the IG's office. And I do know that an investigation was launched. Now, I don't know the status of the IG's investigation, but a referral was made to the Inspector General's office.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Secretary Nelson? Thank you, sir. We appreciate you being with us here today. We will next, as part of the agenda, we have Administrator Elizabeth Bryan from the U.S. Office of Juvenile Justice and Delinquency Prevention, who was scheduled to be here with us today, but is unfortunately not able to be here with us today. She has submitted a statement that I'm going to allow Vice Chairman Womack. Oh, me? Oh, she requested me? Oh, okay. All right. So Vice Chair Womack will not be reading it. I will be reading the statement. All right. I had an opportunity to meet with Administrator Ryan several months ago. It may have been over a year now. We've had a few conversations, and I certainly appreciate and welcome the interest and engagement of Administrator Ryan at the federal level and trying to assist us as we move forward in this state to try to deal with the issue of juvenile justice. So I hadn't had a chance to read this statement yet, but let me go ahead and read this for the purposes of today's meeting. Okay. Again, this is a statement from Liz Ryan, OJJDP Administrator. This week marks the 20th anniversary of the passage of Act 1225, which established the Juvenile Justice Reform Act Implementation Commission and served as a call to action for much needed reforms across Louisiana's juvenile justice system. I want to congratulate the commission on this important milestone, and I applaud your leadership in carrying out the promise of this legislation to end historical and systemic injustice and improve outcomes for youth and families in the state. As I made clear when I spoke to this commission in November, I continue to remain deeply concerned about the transfer of youth in custody to the adult maximum security state Louisiana penitentiary at Angola. This continued practice constitutes a major reversal for the juvenile justice field. Closing the youth unit at Angola should be a top priority for Louisiana's juvenile justice system. OJJDP recommits its support to the commission to identify appropriate alternative placement options for these youth. We stand ready and will continue to provide resources and training and technical assistance as you work to address challenges confronting Louisiana's juvenile justice system. I will just state that I completely agree with the statements made by Administrator Ryan. And we now have, I don't know if anybody else wants to speak to that. I want to thank Administrator Ryan and her leadership, and we will continue to partner with her and her agency to move this state forward in the area of juvenile justice. Now we have Mr. Simon Gonsoulin.
Close.
Simone. And I've been making that mistake repeatedly, Simone. But I got the last name right.
Yeah, you did.
At least one. Simone, I apologize, sir. And this good gentleman has some experience in the state of Louisiana and our juvenile justice system, who's now lending his expertise to us as a commission and as a state as we try to move forward. So Simone, we're grateful for you for engaging with us, and we're grateful that you're here today. So with that, I'm gonna turn it over to you to share some remarks. Thank you, sir.
Appreciate that. It's great to be here with the JRAIC Commission. And some of you, through phone calls, and those who are able to meet and have a conversation. Hopefully, we'll get to that conversation a little later in July. Really do appreciate your time today. As Senator Duplessis said, I'm born and raised in Louisiana, grew up in Iberia Parish, went to school at LSU. My wife and I raised our kids here in Baton Rouge. Unfortunately, they've all left Louisiana and moved over to Texas, but we're trying to get them back. We'll keep trying to move that up, because I am tired of driving that I-10 between Baton Rouge and Houston, to be honest with you. I've worked at the local, parish, and at state level here in Louisiana during my years of work. Probably the most rewarding job I've ever had, and I would say this to my current employer, was being the lead in Curtis's position under Governor Blanco, the justice system here in Louisiana. I don't think I've actually been back in the Capitol since those days. So that's been 15 years. So it is really good to be back. A little PTSD, at times, right, occurred here in this meeting room and others, especially committee meeting rooms. But a lot of wonderful things happened, in my opinion, as far as juvenile justice reform is concerned during that period of time. I currently work with the American Institute of Research, which is a social science nonprofit organization. Its headquarters is in DC. And I currently work under cooperative agreement with the Office of Juvenile Justice and Delinquency Prevention through the Center for Coordinated Assistance to States, which is the center that AIR, or the American Institute of Research, does house and operates. Our job there mainly is to help build capacity at local, state, and federal levels. Making new laws that have come into play. We help systems, take a look at that law, take a look at their existing work, and how can we help to manipulate things or move things along so that you can, in fact, alter some of the work that you're doing currently, and you can move directly into instituting the law, also grant requirements, and just innovative sort of programs that are based on research. As I said a little earlier, the memories of this building are twofold, right? And I want to commend Deputy Secretary Nelson for being here and presenting, because I do remember what it's like to be in the hot seat and the pressure cooker. So I do want to commend you for coming in and sharing that information with everyone. But I remember so many good times here. I remember in this very room, Governor Blanco announcing that she was separating the Office of Juvenile Justice, Office of Youth Development that time from Adult Corrections. And, this was a major, I think, initiative under any administration, to really change the way we look at youth and young people in this state who do enter the juvenile justice system. Had many cabinet meetings in here, children's cabinet meetings, really got the local children and youth planning boards moving through meetings in this particular building. Those committee hearings were a little tough at times. And then we had at that time the JJRAIC, the predecessor to JRAIC, and had many wonderful opportunities meeting with people like Supreme Court Justice Kitty Kimball, Lieutenant Governor Mitch Landrieu, and Senator Don Cravens. All individuals who really promoted juvenile justice reform back when 1225 was passed. So I just want to speak to the commission now about the influence that you have in this state. It can have for juvenile justice reform, but also for all the child serving agencies. I remember many times we'd have these meetings and you'd have the Department of Education here, You'd have OID or OJJ here to speak to you. You'd have the Office of Behavioral Health here. And you'd also have DCFS. Because we know that all of the youth that Curtis is currently serving right now, many of them have been through these systems. All of them through the education system, we hope, right? And hopefully we'll go back to the education system upon release. Many others through the child welfare system. One of the things that we were doing, because this was a recommendation to JRAIC and also Governor Blanco, was for the child welfare system and the juvenile justice system to share data. And, got our lawyers together, to work out all of those sort of kinks that have to be worked out to share data on youth. We had our IT people put their heads together to figure out how we could do that where we're not identifying youth based on any report that's generated. And we were just getting to the point of really looking at that. And I will tell you at that time, this would have been 2007, 2008, it was hovering about 30% of the youth in the deep end of the system, being your secure settings, right, were youth who had blown out of the child welfare system. And then, of course, we know through research, those numbers across the nation can rise to as high as 60%. So, this is why it's so critically important for you as a board or commission to hear from these different state agencies. Education, as I said a little earlier, these are individuals, the kids have been through the education system. We know sometimes the school sometimes is the door that opens, that starts moving the kid on trajectory to enter the juvenile justice system. Not intentionally, but we know what happens when kids get expelled or they drop out of school. We know that the majority of youth in juvenile justice secure care facilities have educational disabilities. And these kids are in special educational programming, many of them in the local school districts. So, it's really critical that we get education here to talk about what are they doing dropout prevention wise? What are they doing to ensure that youth are not being excluded from school for one reason or another? What are those initiatives? How is education and Mr. Nelson's agencies working together to share that information and figure out how to address those sorts of things for the young people? Same thing with behavioral health. Up to 70% of the kids in the juvenile justice system have either behavioral health issues, mental health issues, or substance use issues. And I mean, we need to see what sort of interventions, what sort of prevention programs are going on there. That's something that OJJ needs to be familiar with. This is something you as a commission, you need to be familiar with so you can really ask those questions of the agencies to determine, what's in play in order to break down those silos and ensure that there is a sharing of information, sharing a budget at times. You have the children's cabinet that's still active. That could be a good vehicle for you to talk with or have somebody report out here as well. And today I feel like I'm preaching, and I apologize if that's the way this is coming across, but it is something I'm pretty darn passionate about. And since those days in Louisiana, early 2000, I've been working in juvenile justice work around the country. And it's true here and it's true all over the country. It's not just Louisiana, I assure you, as you all know that. As a consultant for OJJDP, on behalf of Liz Ryan and her staff, I want to offer my assistance to the JRAIC to assist you in the duty that you have ahead of you. I've had an opportunity to meet with some of the JRAIC members already through an interview process. We'll get the others done in July to get your input on where you would like to see this commission go over the next 3 or 5 years, so that you can in fact be an influencer. And that's what, to me, this commission is all about. You're an influencer for the youth in this state, not just youth who are in the juvenile justice system, because as I said, they're citizens of this state, right? So that's stakeholder that's the whole population. Then they move through those different other agencies and systems and could end up in under Curtis's care. But we need to make sure this is a concerted effort, a comprehensive effort across all 4 or more of the child serving agencies. To this point, as Senator Duplessis said, OJDP has met with Senator Duplessis and Gina Womack, and Gina introduced me to the commission via an email. And I want to share just a couple of questions for those people who have not been able to set up a schedule yet. One of the questions that I've asked those people who are on the call is, what is your vision for the JRAC? And this is not, what the statute says, what the charter say, those sorts of things, but what is your vision? Because you all come to the table with a different skill set. And so the responses to that were tremendously different, which you would expect, actually. I was thrilled that they were different, for sure. I also asked, what are the major accomplishments of the commission over the last 3 years? And this is one that commission members struggled with, to identify what has been accomplished over the last 3 years by the commission. I'm just sharing with you what was said to me. I don't know if this is going to be applicable once I interview all the commission members, but I would ask for those people who I have interviewed, if I'm off base here, you need to tell me, okay? This is the place to do it. For those people who I've not interviewed, please let me know if you disagree with this, because these are just trends at this point. But I want to give this back to you, today, so that you have this information. When I asked a question about think 3 to 5 years into the future, what is the potential outcomes for the commission? There was a lot of innovation there. There was a lot of really good thinking as to what you want this commission to be like. Also, some of the summary statements were these. I'll read these off to you. Commission members want long-lasting reform across Louisiana's child serving agencies that address both research and latest evidence-based practices, especially when those services, policies, and supports impact youth moving into the juvenile justice system. The commission members want additional data from primary child serving agencies, those 4 that I talked about a little earlier, to have a clearer understanding of the vision and the mission and the scope of the work of those child serving agencies. Because if they're under Curtis's care right now, they have gone through these systems. Maybe not all 3 of the others, but they will have gone through at least 2 of them probably. Members want a commission to be viable and action-oriented influencer in the state as it pertains to children, youth, and families, the policies that govern the practices, the supports and services, especially those that impact youth who are exposed to the juvenile justice system or are currently within the juvenile justice system. The commission wants to hear about trends in work that's occurring across the child serving systems, and then trends that are occurring on the deep end with Mr. Nelson's shop, and then all the way starting back in education. And members would like to determine what the JRAC will accomplish over the next 5 years. They want to identify short-term achievements, and they want to identify long-term achievements. So there are goals that you're working towards. But this is what I heard. Anybody that I've interviewed, would you disagree with what I've shared with the group? Please do disagree if I'm not accurate. And any of the members that I have not had a chance to interview, would you disagree with what some of your colleagues have said that I'll share with you today? Thanks, I appreciate that. Makes you feel a little better at 68 years of age. So what we'll do, if this is something that the commission wants, if they want the assistance from OJJDP, and I'm happy to be the person to work between OJJDP and the commission, if you would have me do that, is I'll go back to OJJDP, let them know, and they're probably listening right now on YouTube, let them know that you're in agreement with this work, and we'll pull a plan together for you to take a look at in the next month. And that way you can look at it, determine whether you want to tweak things, you want to improve things, expand it, that sort of thing, or remove some of the suggestions. One of the suggestions that we've talked about already with OJJDP is a possible retreat for the commission, where we would really look at developing a 3 to 5 year strategic plan. And in here, you would have your vision, your goals. But the most important thing are the actionable steps that you as a commission member will take to meet those goals and objectives and that vision that you discussed during that retreat. Who's going to be responsible? We'll identify timeline. And also very important is on an annual basis, you as a commission will do a self-assessment. You know, I would suggest that you do this in one of your meetings potentially, and determine where you are in meeting those goals that you set out in your strategic plan. Some of which you'll meet completely, fully, and others will partially complete. I mean, you know, the strategic plan is somewhat aspirational. So, you know, you won't meet every one of them, but where are you? And then what's coming in the following year? And I'll just end this by saying the JJIC, the predecessor to the JRAIC, was unbelievably influential in the juvenile justice reform efforts between 2005, 2004, and 2008. I can only speak to that because that was the only time that I was in that position to feel that and truly feel it from an emotional standpoint and also intellectually. So I'll just leave the conversation here. Any questions or comments? Happy to answer them as best I can. And thank you for the time. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Madam Vice Chair.
So definitely, thank you very much, Simone, Mr. Gonsolin, for sharing the remarks back and from the members that you've spoken to. And I guess at this time, I'd love to put forth a motion to accept the technical assistance from OJJDP and set up a retreat. And I think we have some dates that we tossed out in September.
Okay.
So should I add the dates to the motion?
I don't think we need to tie the dates to the motion, just that we're gonna accept the services of OJJDP and that we will have a retreat. Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Sometime in the fall. We have a motion, Vice Chair Womack, is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Pittman. Any objections? All right, motion is adopted. Thank you, Mr. Gonsolin.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
And we can set up, talk about dates after this, but I'd like to make a couple of remarks if I may.
Most definitely.
So, so I am so excited that we're back and we're making significant, bringing up the significance of Act 1225 and this being the 20th anniversary. Interesting, I saw something recently, something popped up and it was the Louisiana Law Library. And it was the history of juvenile justice legislation. And so looking at that just brought this full circle for me. And it showed that there were 12 pieces of significant legislation around juvenile justice since 1906. Act 1225 of Juvenile Justice Reform of 2003 was number 10. So it's, and number 11 was the separation of the juvenile system from the adult system. So you will see that the work that was done, albeit 20 years ago, was hugely important. And I'm just really excited that there's a renewed commitment to not only work with you all, but to have the support of and technical assistance of the Office of Juvenile Justice Delinquency Prevention. So today, I mean, just thinking, like we're the ones that we've been waiting on to make the changes that our children, youth, and families really need, that they've said it back then and they continue to say it today. So I know Senator Duplessis always says that this isn't gonna be easy. And we know that it's not gonna be easy, but it is worth noting that while it won't be easy, I really have the faith in all of us with persistence and accountability that we can do this. The children and families of Louisiana deserve this, and they're looking forward to us to lead this charge. And additionally, we won't be alone. As Mr. Gonsolin said, we have other players that's going to work with us. So I do think I would like to make one other motion, if I may. And in regards to something that you stated, and I know Secretary Nelson, you've said this before as well, that this isn't just about OJJ, that we definitely need to have other players at the table. So my motion would be to ensure that we have representatives from the education department and the public welfare department at every meeting to give reports on how they are implementing their pieces of the legislation.
Say public education and public welfare.
Education, Department of Education and the public welfare,
Ms. Womack, do you mean child welfare?
child welfare,
Yeah.
yes, thank you.
So, just so we're clear on the motion, a representative from the State Department of Education, the state DCFS, because a lot of people fit in those realms
Right.
that you just, so it could be anybody. We want to be someone from the state agencies.
Yes,
Okay,
and it may be either DCSF or the Children's Cabinet who represents all the child serving entities.
okay. I'm certainly good with it. I would just perhaps add, kind of going back to Mr. Gonsalin's comments that maybe we even include somebody from Department of Health as well. We don't limit it. I mean, the issues are so broad
Right.
and complex that it cannot fall solely at the feet of OJJ, and we are wrong for thinking that it's solely up to OJJ to solve this problem. We have to include those other areas that all contribute to various social determinants, education, family services. I think Department of Health, but I mean, we could go even further, even talking about housing policies, et cetera. But I would support that.
Right.
Education and family services or public
Which is why
welfare.
I think I'm thinking the Children's Cabinet, because all the child serving entities sit there
Mhm.
and participate, and their charge is really to coordinate services.
Okay,
Go ahead.
Am I allowed to speak?
yes,
I think a representative from Children's Cabinet would be great to have here. Absolutely. I think it's critically important for you to have somebody from the state office of those agencies that Senator Duplessis and Ms. Womack just went over. Somebody who is a decision maker. I mean, does not have to be the secretary. I'm not saying that.
Right.
But I think it's critically important that it be somebody who knows the operation
Right.
of the agency, because you'll have questions for them. And if it's somebody that's 3 or 4 rungs below that key leadership, they're just not gonna have that knowledge that you want. They're not gonna have the information you want. And to me, that's how you really become that influencer with those agencies, but then the Children's Cabinet is the overarching governing body. So what Ms. Womack is saying is
That's fair.
important too. So
Yeah.
I would suggest that you have a person from each of those 4 agencies, including OJJ, as Mr. Nelson's been here, and then somebody from the Children's Cabinet, because behavioral health is going to be able to give you the data you want
Mhm.
versus, somebody in maybe another section. You want always adolescent. Within mental health, you want the adolescent office, right? And so those are the people to me you need here, because they have that data. Curtis and Mr. Nelson and those individuals need to be sharing information, to really meet the needs of the kids. And they need to talk with you. You need that information to be the influencer you want to be. So I just thought I would just interrupt the conversation.
No, I'm good to amend
Good with
my
that.
motion, and so just so I have the entities correct, it's DCSF, DOE, OJJ, the Children's Cabinet. Was there another?
I would say unless this has changed, there was an Office of Behavioral Health
that's part of
under
LDH.
the larger DHH umbrella. Yep, please.
I am the representative from LDH from OVH.
Okay,
Okay,
there.
you can clear this up.
right there.
Yeah.
My name's Gina Lewis.
Thank you, Ms. Lewis. Thanks for being here.
May I
I
suggest?
I think that's
sorry.
appropriate. Yes, sir. Go ahead, Mr.
Just
Pittman.
also including the Louisiana Juvenile Detention Association.
And just for clarity, these are entities or individuals that we are inviting to every meeting to come and present, because they're not commission members.
They're not commission members, but just as OJJ is here.
Right,
To give a presentation that these entities should be here as well.
okay.
So amending the motion would be making a motion that in addition to having OJJ come and present every meeting, that we are requesting, requiring DCSF, DOE, Children's Cabinet, Office of Behavioral Health, and Louisiana
Juvenile Detention Association.
Juvenile Detention Association to attend every meeting and give a presentation.
Well, I don't know if we'll have time for each agency to give a presentation,
Well, I
but
mean, if
to
we-
at least attend every meeting.
Attend every
Yeah.
meeting and I think if presentations are succinct,
Yeah,
10 minutes long, and we can give them the data,
Right.
that we need ahead of time.
ahead of time
Yeah.
with a specific meeting agenda. We have a motion from Vice Chair Womack. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Seconded by Mr. Pittman. Any objection? Seeing none, the motion is adopted. I think that's a great idea. And again, I'll just reiterate my point that, I think this is one of the most challenging issues that we face in this state, one of the most urgent issues that we face in the state. But one that as we are here with this 20th anniversary, I'm not particularly one to think it's anything to celebrate, because quite honestly, I'm asking, okay, have we truly achieved the goals and the missions of Act 1225? And I don't believe we have. Maybe we've made some steps, and I just don't want myself or anybody in this room to be here 20 years from now saying, okay, well, now we're at 40 years, and how much progress have we made as a state? So, we have to have some very difficult conversations and make some very difficult decisions around how we view, number one, and then how we act in the area of juvenile justice, going back to having lawyers in the courtroom who understand the difference between punishment and rehabilitation. And there's clearly still a big difference in how we view our role as a state in dealing with juvenile justice. But I don't think it should come as a surprise. I mean, look, just the other night, I have a 5-year-old, and my wife and I had a disagreement in terms of how we should discipline her, right? So I don't want to oversimplify it. These are very complex issues on what we define as the proper methodology. But the experts have all said that the Missouri model is the one that we should adopt. And if you go back to 20 years ago, we did not, as a state, do the proper investment in the Missouri model based upon what has been represented to me. Now, if I'm wrong, then somebody tell me that I'm wrong. We understand the model, but we haven't committed to it. So how can we expect anything different? How can we expect a different outcome by simply having the same meetings, setting the same vision, going through the same exercises, getting it all on paper, having work groups, having subcommittees, setting all of these things, but when the rubber meets the road, we're not making the right investment. We continue to do the same thing, whether it's just politically expedient or convenient, whatever the case is, I don't know. But I don't see any change really happening unless we really have a different conversation around what justice really looks like in this state. And I'm not trying to be preachy, but those are just some of my wrap up thoughts, if you will. We are at now 11:25. We need to confirm another meeting date. I think we're going to look at sometime in December. Is that true? Is that
Yes.
correct? Are we looking at December 1st?
December 1st, if folks are available.
All right. December 1st is a Friday. That currently works for me. So we're gonna go ahead and I'll offer that up. We'll move to set December 1st, 12 p.m. I'm sorry, we're gonna do, I have, 12 to 2. We're gonna do,
12 to 2, does that work or does 10 work better for folks?
I personally prefer to 10 o'clock, but unless anybody suggests that we want to go to 12, I prefer 10 o'clock. All right, we're gonna go with 10 o'clock. December 1st is our next meeting. And
And I'll send
Yeah.
out a doodle poll to folks for the retreat dates so we can get those dates on the calendar.
we want to have an opportunity for public comment, public discussion. That's very important to what we do here at this commission. I know we have individuals who are here. If anybody would like to offer any public comments, please. All right.
My name is Joseph Dominic. I'm the current president of the Louisiana Juvenile Detention Association. I also operate the largest juvenile detention center in the state of Louisiana.
And that is where?
That is the Florida Parish's Juvenile Justice District. We're physically located in Chandler Parish, but we serve 5 parishes. I wanted to come, I appreciate you giving me the time to talk. I wanted to address the commission about what you have on the screen right there. And that's a bit of legislation that was passed this session. But where we as an association, which represents the 13 local detention centers throughout the state of Louisiana, we're not part of state government, although my particular area is a political subdivision of the state. So with this piece of legislation prior to this, if we rewind to 2011, juvenile detention in the state of Louisiana didn't have any standards. There was no standards for operating a juvenile detention center. And so that's, I think, when really good reform started to happen in facilities. I was on the task force for developing those standards, and we worked from 2011 to 2013 to develop the standards and implement them. Around that time, and the legislation was paid out that put DCFS in charge of licensing. It also wrote in that the Louisiana Juvenile Detention Association would provide advisement to DCFS on the standards and the rules as it relates to standards for detention centers. Fast forward to today, this legislation came out, and when House Bill 523 first started, and I chased this bill this session, trying to kind of after the fact say how this was not a good idea. And the reason it wasn't initially is because the language significantly watered down the standards as it would apply to rehabilitating old adult facilities throughout the state. Any practitioner will tell you it's more costly to take some adult facility and renovate it to serve juveniles, because as I've heard you talk today, juvenile justice is very different than criminal justice. And so that's how that piece of legislation started out. And as lawmakers do, they go back and forth and work on what's the best fit for everybody. Well, then that language got completely removed, and this language got put in. So this language never really had anything to do with the original bill. It got through in there, and I and the association view it as nothing more than DCFS shirking their responsibility of overseeing licensure. Everything has been put in.
I want to be clear as you're speaking, because I want to make sure I'm understanding.
Sure.
That DCFS licensure only applied to pre-adjudication facilities. Or did that apply to all facilities?
Well, all juvenile detention centers are inherently pre-adjudication facilities. However, we have youth that are pending OJJ secure and non-secure placement sitting in our facilities. For example, in my facility, I have a youth who's been there 121 days pending. He's been there actually longer. He's just been pending placement.
In secure
121
care,
days.
pending placement in secure care, but he's already, so he's post adjudication, just haven't been placed yet.
Yes.
All right, got it.
And he's sitting there. And so the conflict of interest that was also created here is that OJJ pays our facilities like mine across the state, they pay us to hold on to their kids pending placement, and that's set through state statute. So now what you've created is a situation, and with all due respect to Mr. Nelson, he's a colleague of mine. I think he's doing great work. I have great respect for him, but he inherited some issues just like his predecessor inherited in OJJ. And I'm not saying that Curtis would do this, but I don't know what the next deputy secretary or the next leadership in OJJ would do, but it has created the ability for them to strong arm detention centers and say, hey, you got our kids, just hang on to them a little while longer because we're responsible for licensing you. The other bad thing that this bill did was it took the Louisiana Juvenile Detention Association out of the equation. We don't have the ability anymore to suggest standards or have a say in what the standards that are going to be promulgated are. And fact of the matter is, we are the practitioners. And nothing against OJJ, but my facility doesn't have a history of kids tunneling out of cells. And that's the fact of the matter. We're actually doing it bigger and better. And so what we as the association are going to work to do is get some legislators on board to reverse this or to make the law more sensible where OJJ is not the licensing body. I'm not saying that OJJ can't be one day. I'm just saying that OJJ is not ready for this right now. OJJ has some issues that they have to solve, and I know y'all can all agree with that. And this is just bad timing for a bill like this to come out. And I'll close with this. At the same time, during the same legislative session, Senate resolution, was it 158? You had it up there earlier, 168 came out, which the Senate and the House both unanimously concurred that there needs to be a study done of OJJ for licensing standards for OJJ facilities. So in the same session, we said OJJ is fit to oversee detention centers and licensure, but wait a minute, OJJ needs licensure and standards themselves. That just doesn't make any sense. And so I wanted to open that up and share that, put it on record, because this is something that for the next year, we're going to have to work to change because it does everything opposite of what this commission was set up to do. It's basically taking Louisiana back 12 to 13 years, at least as far as secure care and juvenile detention goes.
Thank you. Thank you for, no, that's important. I appreciate you being here today. Appreciate your work.
Thank you.
I've heard a lot about the work that you all are doing in the Florida parishes. And yeah, I certainly, I don't know if OJJ wants to respond or maybe you don't have to. I'm kind of putting you on the spot by opening that door, but you know, if you think it's something we should address in the future, work with you know, the detention, the Juvenile Detention Association in trying to correct this. I know how this stuff happens during session. That's why it's an ongoing process. Okay. I saw that the bill did go to conference committee. So there were some changes that were made along the way. But it seems like it's something that we're going to have to address going forward to try to correct, because I think you raise a great point that you have two conflicting pieces of legislation. So let's commit to working on that going forward, Mr. Nelson. All right. Is there anybody else who's here in attendance that would like to address the commission? Yes, sir.
Tony Celestine, I'm the director of the Calhoun Parish Office of Juvenile Justice Services and also a member of LJDA. I don't really have any more talking points because I think Mr. Dominique said it all, but from a perspective, I mean, a practitioner's perspective and someone that's been in the juvenile justice field for a number of years, that feels that I run a pretty good shop in Southwest Louisiana. I too concur with his stance on the fact that I think this sets us back a number of years with this legislation. I think we've all came to the table. We were invited. Well, we were never invited to the table. We just kind of lucked up on this at the last minute. Once again, myself and Mr. Dominique has both met with Mr. Nelson. So this is not anything foreign. He knows our concerns. I feel like it's also an unfunded mandate for OJJ because I don't think they have the infrastructure right now to support this type of responsibility. I also don't feel like it's fair that DCFS, you know, pushes off the responsibility on OJJ. DCFS already has a functioning licensing department. you can't have your cake and eat it too, Senator Duplessis. You can't say, we're gonna assume that we're gonna continue the licensing of daycares and residential facilities, but we're gonna pass on the responsibility of the detention facilities to OJJ. It needs to be either one, all or none. I also feel like the reason why DCFS was chosen initially, when as myself and Mrs. Dominique were involved with the original writing and development of the statewide standards to protect juvenile detention centers, we felt that they were an independent agent that did not have a stake in the game in local detention facilities. As Mr. Dominique mentioned, we do house non-secure non-secure youth as well as secure youth awaiting placements. We all operate as a short-term free adjudicated detention center, but we also have the ability to hold kids that are post-adjudicated in our areas. And, we understand the crisis that OJJ is dealing with, and we've been more than applicable and understanding and trying to work with OJJ because we know that they're doing what the best that they can and they have limited bed space. But we don't want to develop an adversarial system where the person that's licensing us also are actually paying us to hold their kids. I think it's almost like an oxymoron. It creates a real tough position for us all. And I think we developed over the last several years, we developed a very strong working relationship with OJJ and the locals. And I just really feel like now that we have a voice at the table, if LJDA is invited to be a part of this work, we at the locals, we have a lot of knowledge. There's a number of individuals here that work in local detention centers and run local probation departments. I run an assessment center, run a detention center, probation department, all under one umbrella. And we've been nationally recognized for the work that we do. So we have a level of expertise that we can support OJJ's work and the work that goes around the state if we're just brought to the table. And I just feel like had we been here, I think we could have really, deterred something like this from happening. And I think it was mentioned earlier, if it wasn't mentioned, I do want to indicate that we're fully prepared to educate ourselves and be prepared to to hopefully get somebody to author legislation to repeal this or push it back to something that's a little bit more reasonable. But that's just how strongly we feel. As one of the originators of writing the juvenile detention standards, it's very hurtful to know that the work that we put in for 10 years and we've shown success through data for 10 years that this has worked. Now we're going to change it in midstream to an agency that's not equipped to do it and probably doesn't even want to do it, but it was put there. So just wanted to put that out and thank you all for your time and allowing me to speak.
Thank you. Thank you for your service. Thank you for being here. All right. Any other member of the public care to comment or speak on it? Yes, ma'am.
Hello, my name is Tracy Wells Huggins, and I'm hailing to you from New Jersey, although I love Louisiana.
All right.
I am the national chair for the Coalition for Juvenile Justice, but I'm standing to you today and behind that title. I'm standing today as a mother who was concerned when she read the information about children being transferred to Angola. I appreciated your statement about calling it what it is. The very first thing that I did as the national lead trainer for the Justice for Families entity was called the #1 family organizing, parent organizing entity that exists in this nation when it comes to transformation, not reformation of the juvenile justice system. I contacted FLIC, Family and Friends of Louisiana's Incarcerated Children. Why would I not? This was happening in their backyard. And they already had the game plan to stop this from happening in their backyard and across the nation if it's fully funded and implemented. And that is Act 1225. So I'm glad to hear you say that pretty much, if I can paraphrase, it's not worth the paper it's printed on if it's not fully funded and implemented. Because had it been, we wouldn't have this travesty of justice that's taking place with our young people. And so one of the things that I'd like to have you really consider as a partner is that it be on your strategic plan as an actionable item when you have your retreat. Because if not, You're gonna continue to have not just rollbacks, but you're gonna continue to have the same thing you've always had, an opportunity that you failed to step into.
Thank you. Thank you. Anybody else, any comments? Okay, I want to just take a moment to recognize a few people that I see here. I see Chief Judge Raynard Darrensburg from my home parish of Orleans. Thank you for all that you do. Thank you for your service, and just want to acknowledge you being here today.
Thank you. Very
Yeah.
glad to be here. Learned a lot this afternoon, and thanks a lot for the work that you guys are doing to improve juvenile justice.
Absolutely. Okay, so with that, I think we have come to the end of today's agenda for a meeting that I think we had run into some challenges scheduling wise for since our last meeting, but I think, you know, momentum matters, cohesiveness matters in terms of addressing any issue. But we're about to enter into a new term. There will be a new governor in this state. There will be a new legislature. And by the time we meet again in December, those elections will have happened. So all of those different pieces are going to factor into which direction we end up going as a state. And I just state that to say it's important for us to all be engaged at the local level, at the state level, in our various communities, in making sure that this election season, because we know what happens during election season, you know, that narrative around crime and that narrative around how we respond to crime, it comes into hyper focus. And, you know, one of the most politically expedient things that we see during the campaign trail is a lot of the same rhetoric that got us to the place that we are today. And I believe a lot of that same rhetoric has not made us any safer as a state. So we have to challenge one another as people who are both in the system and members in the community, that if we're looking for something different, we need to be asking for something different. And again, everybody wants safety. Everybody wants justice, although our definition of justice might slightly differ. But if we're not treating the juvenile justice system as being different from the adult system, then what's the point of having two systems? We have two systems for a reason. I'm not a social scientist. I'm not a neurologist or studied the brain or anything like that, but we have two different systems for a reason. And we had this debate last legislative session. You had a whole bunch of legislation that came in to effectively repeal the raise of the age, right? And I'm thankful that the governor vetoed one of those bills, but I'm just reemphasizing that you can make progress in the state, but just as easily you can, with one piece of legislation, you can set it all back, right? So, let's focus in on the opportunity we have here as a commission to exercise, as Mr. Gonsolin pointed out, the influence that we have, and that we probably have not been properly exercised. Because if we had been, we probably could have been in front of that legislation, and knowing that any member of this 144 member legislature knows that bringing bills like this should probably all be vetted through this commission. That's the influence that this commission should have. All right. So, and that's not to point fingers or throw anybody, that is just, we need to all be working together on this solution, because the fact of the matter is, if we knew what it was, whatever side you're on, then we would, nobody can claim to have the silver bullet, because there is no silver bullet. So we all need to be coming together to try to figure out how to deal with this difficult issue around juvenile justice. So Vice Chair Womack, thank you for your commitment and your leadership over these many decades. And thank y'all all for being here today. So with that, I know we'll have some meetings in between now and December 1st, but I look forward to seeing you all back here on December 1st. Thank y'all so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. A motion to adjourn.
Oh.
Yep, and motion to adjourn by Commissioner Pittman. Yeah.
Oh, second.
Second.